Callum, Greg and Richard, right here on Talking Reds.
Hello to everyone out there. We're grateful for all of you guys joining us. And this is, of course, Talking Reds. This is Nottingham Forest podcast. I am Richard Spray. And to my right is, with that beautiful white beard, he's not our resident Father Christmas, but he is a gift. He is a gift, guys. That is Greg Oram joining us as well. And all the way from down under, Scott Terry, who runs the Nottingham Forest Australia group. Grateful to have him on. And, of course, the Grand Madness himself, Mr. Andrew Cove. Guys, it's great to have you guys on. Great to have everybody who's joining with us. What a week for the Mighty Reds. 2 consecutive wins, right? Dyche coming through. 5 matches in 15 days, guys, and moving from that abysmal result at Everton, moving on from that, right, that disaster, but also another clean sheet under Dyche. So all the things we thought about him are coming to fruition, guys. I just want to kind of jump right into everything. We've introduced everybody, but Greg, how are you feeling? You were at the match. Andrew was at the match. So how are you feeling about that performance in general?
Well, it was fantastic. I don't think any of us really. I don't think any of us in our, in our wildest dreams. I mean, that's probably a bit too strong, because we've shown when we went to Liverpool that we can pick up wins against the so-called top-tier teams. And Spurs are flattered to deceive, don't they? I mean, in real terms, Spurs really are just another Fulham or another West Ham. They just have a nice, big, shiny stadium. I know they won the Europa League last season, but they've got good players. But they are that kind of team where you're not quite sure what Spurs you're going to get. So, I said in the preview, 3-2 win. It was 3-0. And in truth, it could and should have been more. We could have come away easily as 5-0 winners. Spurs were poor, but let's not get away from the fact that Forest were very, very, very good. They did everything right. Dyche summed it up in his own words after the match. It was a brilliant performance. They were putting in the effort that he's been asking of them, and it was coming off. And we saw some standout performances, which I know we'll get into, from our players. There wasn't a bad performance amongst them. When the team got read out or came out, I think everybody was a little bit concerned about the goalkeeper with Sells being out. But he came through and kept a clean sheet. So, we're going to get into the bones of it for sure. But what I would say as an overriding view is great to be in the NAV beforehand, to meet Andrew in person and see Danscape was in there as well, and 1 or 2 others. But then to go to the game with my son, which is always a joy. Great view from the family stand in the Peter Taylor. And from the off, we were just up for it. And it was that game that I've really been hoping we could produce. And look, we've moved up the table, which is what was really important. We had other results going in our favour over the weekend as well, which always helps. But it's about what we do, and what we did on the pitch yesterday was fantastic.
I think you covered it well. Yeah, Andrew, my NFFC North America brother. How are you feeling about this? Because as you said, you kind of took in the festivities and so forth, but just in terms of the overall performance as a team, Greg touched on that, just holistically really good, wasn't it?
It was. And I think I thought this, about 75 minutes in, I thought it felt like we were seeing the best 90 minutes that team, especially under Dyche, that team has put together over the course of the season. I thought that at half time, that it was the best 45 minutes that we'd put together, and nothing really changed in the second half. I think, to Greg's point, yes, it was a very poor Spurs side, but you've still got to beat even a very poor side. And I thought we did that on every single level. I think, to Greg's point as well, that there were no bad performances. There were absolutely a few standouts, but they seemed to all know and understand what the assignment was. And the fact that we were playing against a poor side obviously just elevated that even more. But yeah, I think it's everything that we've kind of wanted to see out of Dyche. I think we were very, very strong at the back. I assume we'll get into the Murillo-Milenkovic partnership and how much stronger we look with those two. But we also look good going forward. I think seeing Callum and Amari play on the wings, I think that's kind of the 2 wingers that we've been calling out for probably the last few weeks, just to see them get the start and then come through and live up to that potential that we've been hoping to see. I thought it was fantastic. I mean, like I say, every single man, even the subs that came on, they all did a job. And yeah, fantastic win. And a great for the goal difference as well side of things, because, well, we're still kind of in that cautionary, part of the table. I think putting 3 goals and the clean sheet, it gives us that little buffer. With the way other results went over the weekend, it was literally perfect day.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, what about you? General thoughts and on the match, and so, I mean, coming off that Everton match, I think we're all feeling a little bit. Well, I mean, we got the win obviously in the week as well, like we touched on earlier. But yeah, how are you feeling about everything?
Yeah, it was a big contrast in performance, wasn't it? Really, we started well. We started really well against Spurs, and I think that's always key for us. When we start well, we tend to generally get a good result in games. It was quite a late one for me here in Queensland, Australia. It was a midnight kickoff. For Sydney and Melbourne, it would be a 1 a.m. kickoff, so even later for those guys. But in terms of the performance, it was just really good to see. Obviously, we beat Utrecht with a late win there, and then to beat Spurs. Typically, I wasn't sure how we were going to do beforehand. I was really not sure about where the performance would be, what sort of level that we would get to. But yeah, look, to score 3 goals. A really all-round team performance. Every year you've all mentioned it. I don't think there was one player that you could say didn't really turn up and didn't really put in a really solid, sound performance. Callum with the 2 goals, and Sangare. How good is it seeing Sangare score? He's finally. I think we're starting to see the player that we all want him to be. So yeah. Really happy with the performance. My 2 sons got up with me as well, so I was watching the game with them, from sort of midnight till about 2 a.m. But it's always good when they watch the game with me as well, because we can share the high of a really good victory against Spurs, who didn't play great, but I think Andrew called it. Just because the other team doesn't play great, you've still got to beat them. You've still got to score. And 3 goals, 3 points, fantastic. Very happy. Excellent.
Phenomenal, in fact, right, Greg? Phenomenal.
I think the word is valid today. We'll allow it.
Okay, good. Appreciate those who are in the comments. I want to shout out a few people here. So we've got Brucey, as always, from Texas. Good man. Appreciate you being involved and jumping in the comments. Daniel Hall as well, off of winning a shirt. Right, through Talking Red, so hopefully you'll get that soon. I think Daniel's in Australia as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
right?
the shirt. Whilst Daniel's here, I've had notification that Every are delivering it to his cousin today. So Paul, I think his name's Paul. I think his cousin. So yeah, Daniel's coming over. I think to the UK. He's going to be going to the Brentford match, which I don't think I'm going to get to. I think he's going to Ferencvaros as well, which I won't get to. So he'll be able to pick his shirt up when he gets into the UK.
Excellent. I'm glad you were able to win that, buddy. Oh, Nick Dermott calling out Sangare as well. We all knew there was a player there. I can't disagree with that. Great touch and clever passer. We've also got Big Arn, who we love. Hopefully, did you get to see him?
Yeah, we saw Big Arn.
Yeah, okay.
He came over. Who wants a baby Guinness? Who wants a baby Guinness? And of course, I had to oblige. But Dan Scape said he would see Big Arn in the NAV post-match, and Big Arn is saying that he couldn't find him. So he had to drink his baby G. Big On, you are the life and soul. We love you dearly.
Absolutely. Real pleasure meeting you when I was there too. Pat Brett, of course, appreciate you jumping in. Every player performed well. Can't disagree. It was a superb. There's another good word, Greg. Superb team performance. We've got D22, Ole. How many passes did we complete with Ole's? I think we were just talking about that, right, Andrew? And of course, we got Steve Battlemuch, wonderful counselor there, and appreciate him jumping in as well in the comments. Yeah, I just want to kind of switch gears a little bit, and of course, can't go too long without saying please like and subscribe, because Greg and I created this channel with the intent on connecting with people, right? Especially the Forest fan base, and so appreciate anybody who's willing to hit like and subscribe. That would be great. Oh, and look who's also jumped in. Sorry, Big Arm was sat with Steve. See, he couldn't get his Danscape moment in, unfortunately. It looks like at the NAB, but grateful to have seen some pictures. Saw Dan, Chris, a few others right with you. I think you said Greg and Andrew, who you got to meet. So that's brilliant. All right. So speaking of Sangare, Greg, if you wouldn't mind loading up this particular tweet. Post, right? They're not tweets anymore. Ibrahim Sangare's game by numbers versus Spurs. So 53 touches, 41 passes attempted, for those who are not able to see this, 36 passes completed, 6 ball recovers, 3 clearances, 2 tackles attempted, 2 tackles won, 2 chances created, 2 assists, 1 goal, and a partridge in a pear tree. So directly involved in every goal, which is pretty awesome. So you can take that down, Greg. But I kind of want to come to you, Greg, because I know, look, not trying to call you out by any means. You've been very fair, very much willing to say, hey, if this guy turns it around and he starts playing to the level we anticipated when he came in, then maybe, I'll definitely be the first one to shout him out. So are there any doubts for you at this stage in terms of what, Sangare offers? And isn't it amazing to think that, if you go back 2 years and said, hey, we're going to miss Sangare coming off of, a great stretch run for him for performances and going into AFCON in 2026, 2025, 2026. I mean, how do you feel? Is he the guy now with Ando in that midfield?
Well, yeah, on the evidence from not just yesterday, but also other performances since Sean Dyche come in, absolutely. And in the past, what I would say is, look, whenever we talk about players, we talk about performances, we talk about the club, the team, we can only talk about what's presented to us in that moment. You can't look into the future. If we all had crystal balls, we'd be living on an island somewhere and spending lots of money because we could get what we wanted. The thing is, Sangare 2 years ago was starting to come into his own. Just as he was going off to AFCON, we beat Newcastle 3-1. He had a really good game. It wasn't anything like yesterday, but he goes off to AFCON. There's the malaria episode. There's a long-term injury. So we know that there's things that have got in the way of him performing to the highest level. But I think a lot of us were just really frustrated because, and I can only speak for myself, I think I was looking at the body language a little bit, thinking maybe it just doesn't feel right. Maybe he wasn't being utilised properly. It's hard to say. It's hard to put your finger on it. We are just fans. We are giving opinions. And, being accused of having an agenda against Sangare in the past was just laughable because there's no agenda against anybody. As I've always said, I want every single player who pulls in that red shirt to be amazing every single time they do it. But we're here and on the pod to chat about the team and to chat about performances. And none of his performances for a long time were very good. He looked out of sorts. He looked like he couldn't run very fast. He was getting turned. He was picking up silly yellows. The player that we thought we'd signed from PSV just wasn't there. So you talk about that player at that time and you say, I just don't see a future for him at the club. Because also we had so many players coming into the club, not just in the Premier League era, the new Premier League era, but also 4, 5, 6, 7 years backwards in the Championship, when we're signing these players that come in, like Dumitru, for example, or Lika, and these players, you think, oh, this could be the one, this could be the player that comes in, albeit a Championship side, and very, very quickly you look at them and you go, this guy's really, really bad. So we have got a habit, maybe a bad habit, of looking at players in isolation and very quickly making our minds up about them, and most of the time being proved right about them because they don't perform and they don't go on. So when we kind of looked at Sangare not performing and not really giving us what we thought we were going to get from the PSV Sangare, it's, I think maybe we can all be a little bit excused for thinking this guy isn't going to work out. However, fast forward to where we are now, I don't think it's too much to say that the Sean Dyche factor has a huge part. And I think also when Sean Dyche came in, if you go back to look at the episodes, what I will say, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I think I said Sangare could be the man that benefits from Sean Dyche. I felt like he really could be a player that is unlocked a little bit. So for whatever reason or however he's done it, maybe that extra fitness that Sean Dyche is talking about has been really impactful on Sangare, because yesterday he was just everywhere. It was a complete midfielder's performance. It was incredible, from the header that hit the post within the first 3 or 4 minutes to him closing down, not just for the first goal, but other areas as well, to spreading passes. The header for Callum's second goal, where he launched himself up the left wing and he's banged it down to Callum. So that's another assist. He was just incredible. So great to be proved wrong. I want nothing more than good things for all of our players. And I tell you what, I'm so happy for Ibrahim Sangare. I'm gutted he's going off to AFCON. I'm praying to the gods of football that he comes away unharmed. I hope he has a wonderful tournament. I hope he comes back and can slot straight back in again. Douglas Luiz coming back is good timing because we need that centre midfield, and we can talk about options in the centre midfield maybe as we go through the pod. But no, on Sangare, a great performance yesterday, clear man of the match. I mean, there were some wonderful performances from Callum, and I thought Igor Jesus was fantastic as well. But on Sangare, man of the moment, deserves a huge pat on the back and everything else. A wonderful performance.
Absolutely, yeah. There may or may not be a reason why I asked you that question, Greg, because I know you've tried to say I don't have an agenda. I'm just calling it like it is, and I think Graham Smith in the chat was saying too. You know, opinions are not agendas, which is true, right? And you've always said, hey, if you've got an opinion, you can back it up. We're all willing to hear it, right?
One of the challenges that Sangare had when he first came in is as well, and this seems to get forgotten a lot, was there was a huge price tag attached to him when we bought him from PSV.
That's true.
He was almost the same amount of money as we spent on Morgan Gibbs-White. And at a time when we weren't spending anywhere close to that, you know, I think we spent like 18 million on Nico. There were a few around that kind of 15, 20 million mark, but 30 to 35 million pounds for a number 6 was astronomical at the time. And then when he didn't perform to the level that we were hoping for, yes, you're going to get a target on your back. No, I'm same as Greg. I'm so pleased that he's been able to kind of get the full fitness and then come back from those injuries and now getting a constant run in the team. You're seeing the player that we signed, but like I said, to Greg's point, I don't think there was ever an agenda against him. I think we were just baffled by the amount of money that we paid and the return on that investment. And that's not Sangare's fault, but it does create a narrative. And I think that was part of the problem that he's now finally able to get past.
Which, I mean, and for players like him, you know, I mean, not to belabor this too much, but I think for players like him as well, it's coming up from a league that maybe historically had struggled to produce some very talented players and stay talented and stay productive within the Premier League, right? Which we all know it is the most difficult league in the world to play in. So it is great to see that. And ironically, I mean, I think it was Dan who put this out on X, was talking about, you know, the 2 best performances that we can really isolate and go, these are the best of performances of Ibrahim Sangare, where Newcastle, and Greg touched on that, right before AFCON, and now, you know, this match. So it's pretty awesome to see him kind of come full circle, but have a lot of good, you know, performances in between too. Scott, speaking of Sangare, I kind of want you to, we want to shift into talking about Callum Hudson-Odoi, because he's Greg's son's favorite player. The guy is absolutely brilliant. We all know what he's capable of. But how did you feel about his performance? And talk about, I think, that first goal, because there's 2 pieces to that. One, it's you know Sangare's lead up to that, and just in general Callum's performance, especially with that crazy second goal, which was completely out of nowhere. But kind of get into what you thought about him and how you think what you're seeing from him now that you think will really help Forest continue to move forward and progress.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was Sangare that was pressing, that pressed the defenders, which basically created the opportunity where he squared the ball to Callum and he pretty much had a tap in. There is a stat as well. So just before we move off Sangare, he is the first Forest player to score and also provide 2 assists in the Premier League since Stevie Stone way back in May 1996. I don't know if you've seen the
irony
on that one. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But it was great to see. It was great to see Callum back to some of his best footy, some of his best attacking footy, and I think the fact that we had 2 wingers, 2 out-and-out wingers. We had Hutchison on one side, and obviously Callum on the other side, and we had that twin threat. So I think that we, you know, for Spurs trying to defend against that, they can't sort of overload on one side. They've got to stay spread across the pitch. So I think that helped us. But how good was it to see Callum actually playing well to get those goals? The second goal, was it a cross? Was it a shot? Who cares? Scored.
Yeah,
so that's amazing, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, the intent may be one, the end result was another.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it was just really good to see. It was really good to see Callum score, playing with a smile on his face, which he often does anyway. But yeah, like, I'm really pleased for him. I think as well the fact that you know, Back was coming back as well. Then I think having these threats on the wings, that I think is where we can really push on and really start developing that attacking style of play. Twin threats, the defense, the defending, the team we're playing against, and the way they got to defend against us is they've got to be, spread across the pitch. They can't try and overload us in certain areas. So I think by having a fit Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's now scored 2 goals in a rich vein of form, he's looking good. He's not only is he just cutting in now, which seemed to be his main sort of option, which he used to take. Which he certainly did a lot last season, and he used to cut in and then try and shoot. He's now added that push into the byline and then trying to provide a decent cross into the box as well. So I think again that's keeping defenders on their toes as well, to making sure that they're kind of just trying to show him one way. So look, it's great to have him back, and also I'm a big fan of that sort of twin threat of 2 wingers. So yeah, really pleased.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. And that kind of makes me want to switch to another point, Andrew, and have you kind of touch on, speaking of what Scott was mentioning in terms of the way that we deploy those wingers, because I think that was the one area where it felt like we were still pretty unsettled. We weren't seeing the level of performance from both sides of the pitch. So from your perspective now, how hard is it for Dan and Doy to get back into the squad now that it seems like we've got Hutch settled on one side and then you've got Callum settled on the other?
It'll be very difficult. I think we've been crying out, not because we don't like the guy, but I think we've seen the dip in performances from Dan Undoy in the last few weeks, and we've been crying out for Callum to get a start. Now, whether or not that's because we haven't had backward fit as a backup or for whatever reason, I don't know. But I mean, Callum's taken his chance, and I don't think you can drop Amari Hutchinson right now, because the energy that you get from Hutchinson and the nuance and that raw technical ability that you see from Callum Hudson-Odoi, the touch, the finesse, he's one of the best passers in the team, save Elliot Anderson. I don't think you can drop them. I think you saw Dan Undoy come on for, what was it, 5 minutes at the end, just as a brief cameo? I think until he comes on, or until somebody gets injured, or Undoy comes on and suddenly, shows the player that we saw in those first couple of games, or the promise, I think we've found our 2 wingers. I think what I like with Hutchinson, and you touched on this earlier, Scott, they were having to double up because we've got that twin threat now, and they seem to be doubling up on Hutchinson to stop him coming inside onto his left foot, because that's his danger, but that's where he can, strike the ball cleanly and do what he does. That's leaving spaces elsewhere, and now we are so good in that middle depart with Gibbs White, with Anderson, and with Sangare, being able to switch wings very quickly and very efficiently. So you create an overload on one side through Hutchinson because they're having to double and triple threat him because the danger's there. We can then switch the ball very quickly to Hudson-Odoi, and there's a weakness on that side. And that I saw that quite a lot throughout the game. To touch just briefly back, there's one thing just before we close the loop on the first goal with the Hudson-Odoi goal. They'd been playing the ball out from the keeper from the first minute, and they were very, very bad at it. And I thought at one point, just before we scored that first goal, it's going to go one of 2 ways. We'll either eventually we'll try and get ahead of them, and we'll press sooner, as actually happened with the goal, or we'll press and they'll play for us, and it'll create that space that they were trying to do by playing it out from the back. I saw Sangare moving before the goal, and I think he did it again a few times after that as well. It was so telegraphed and so obvious what was going to happen. Now, I thought that Sangare had miscontrolled it and that we were actually going to lose the chance when he took that second touch.
He did.
Fantastic.
That's a good point, yeah.
But like I say, just to echo back to the point on Spurs being bad, that was terrible from Spurs. They kind of gave us that opportunity on a silver platter, but you've still got to take it to circle back to that point. Sangare, if he's not seeing that and seeing it and reading the pattern from the early stages of the game, you can't capitalize on it, and we did that. So, yeah, to circle back again to the point on the wingers, I think we've found our 2. I think with Backward coming in as well, if we see the promise that we see from Backward, that he's the player that we hope he is, I think he's probably a better replacement in the later stages than Dan Undoy at the moment. So, yeah, I think it's Hudson-Odoi and Hutchinson until something changes, or until they give the manager a reason not to pick those 2 as the starting players. Maybe Dan Undoy is our Europa League winger from now on. Maybe that's how it's changed, because obviously we don't have Hutchinson until we can reset the squad in January.
Yeah, all great points. Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of it's always a good thing, I think, or it has been a good thing in the past. You've seen this with Nico, you've seen this with Elanga, of course, who's struggling obviously, or just not getting a lot of time to play for Newcastle at this stage. So yeah, I know, right? But Andrew's doing the oh so sad, violin thing there. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of being able to sit and kind of reevaluate, decompress, all that kind of stuff. Because, I think we had hoped in the last match where Dan N'Doye was starting, I think it was against Utrecht, it was like, or maybe it was the match before that, I can't remember. But you would hope that would be the confidence builder that he would need to try to drive himself forward. But unfortunately, it just looks like he's probably going to get sat for a bit. All right. Well, by the way, it looks like we got Wolfie in the chat too, and I'm really sorry about that, Wolfie. We don't mean to incite any concerns of, or your OCD by having Greg on the right camera. Trying to give Greg a little bit more of an opportunity to focus on just being able to share some great opinions. He shares great opinions in the past too, but it's a lot to decipher, right, Greg, when you're hosting and try to maneuver it all around and orchestrate everything. So appreciate him.
Quickly, 30 seconds. Well, less than that. What I would say,
go ahead.
Sangare did take a heavier touch when he got the ball off Archie Gray, because I was sat right in front of it, and it was an amazing bit of anticipation. He was on Archie Gray literally as Vicario was passing it, which is why he got it off him, and he almost overran it. But it was a great flick to Callum. It was a wonderful goal. But just quickly on the wingers, Hutchinson has been fantastic. He's in form. He's confident. But yesterday was very reminiscent of last season with Alanga and Morgan Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi, that kind of like triple threat. That's the first time yesterday I think it felt like, a little bit back to how we were last season with those real threats down the wing. Dan N'Doye's got a lot of work to get back in that team for me.
No, I agree. And I love that move. I mean, there was moments too where Hutchinson was drifting in centrally, I think, and almost fulfilling a sort of a second 10 role. You saw him cut across that I think he worked through about 2 or 3 different Tottenham players and took that shot, which just went wide, right? So there was definitely a lot you saw from him. And I think the most interesting thing for him, not to belabor this point either, it was the way he got back. And he actually played defensively. So I mean, he was one of the better guys on the team in terms of duels. I mean, defensively. So it's good signs. I mean, obviously he's not a huge guy, so he's going to struggle a little bit with some of the the size and the physicality of defenders in the Premier League, clearly. But nothing but great things from him as well. That's what I think. This was a holistic team performance, but you can definitely pick out some isolated moments of just absolute brilliance from players. So great point, Greg. Thank you. Just kind of switching gears one second before we take a quick break, but. I want you to talk about that goal from Sangare, Greg, because I felt like, and I know some others on the podcast, I think Raf's been putting this out there. It just felt like at some point it was coming. You saw him do at least once, I know, when he was with PSV. So take us through that whole passage of play, because the build up to it was quite interesting as well, and quite a thing to behold.
Well, look, I mean, sat in the crowd, we always say, you get a different view than what you see on the television. So because I was sat in the Peter Taylor more towards the Trent end, the action was taking place down our left wing, and so it was kind of like a little bit further away. So I was trying to keep an eye on what was going on. So I've seen the goals back, but it only shows me the kind of point up until where it was that Sangare header. So before that, I think we kind of worked the ball and won the ball back, because we were winning the ball back all the time. I mean, Spurs were really cheap with the ball. I mean, like I said, they were poor, but I think we made them look poor because we were so on it as well. Our intensity and our endeavour and our desire just outmatched them. And it almost like, I don't know, maybe they got down tools, because there's a lot of talk with Thomas Frank and them. But on Forest, we just were on it and at it. So when Sangare won that header for Callum, this is the Callum goal I'm talking about, it was superb for him to get that assist. But then when the ball broke down in the middle of the field for Sangare's goal, again, we were picking the ball up and it got threaded between Sangare and someone else. And then all of a sudden, Callum's got it and bringing it inside. This whole space just opened up. I think Paulinho was possibly the closest to Sangare, but still some way off. And there was a lot of kind of bodies more in the box. And it just broke to Sangare. And at first, I wasn't quite sure who it was, because it happened so quickly when you're trying to keep an eye on things. But then he leathered it. And to see it just fly, I mean, everyone was just in complete shock, joy, awe. And it just capped off, as I've said, the perfect performance, because he was everywhere and he made the 2 goals for Callum. So for him to get his goal in the way that he did, and it wasn't a driving run and a lovely kind of slotted goal like he scored against Leeds. It was a pile driver that he caught Keeper, obviously, no chance. It's always more special when you hear the post clatter and it goes in off the post. There's something about that sound that makes it just a little bit better. And it was just an incredible thing to see. And again, I just underline how happy I am and was for him to score that goal. And so, I was jumping up and down. I picked Orlando up and we were just having a real great father-son day out because we were winning, we were scoring, and we were brilliant.
Yeah, I love the way you explained that. Yeah, because I mean that's the value of being there in person, right? You really get to soak in the full atmosphere of everything. I was telling my son yesterday too. I was like, Scott, you've probably felt this way. Andrew, I'm sure you felt this way. Every time we score a goal and I get to watch it back on replay and I hear that crowd, I just get goosebumps. I just get I get it. It's like pure elation, right? It's unfortunate that our moods, at least my mood, sort of seems to shift and undulate and get and improve based off of the performance level and where we end up in terms of the result. But yeah, I love that, man. I'm so glad you and Orlando got to experience that because it's been draws, right? I mean, which is better than losing, but it's never been an actual win. So maybe one day I will get that opportunity as well. One time when I attend with you, I'll get a chance to actually witness a victory.
We were long overdue. It was a while since we had seen a win, and in fact, it was Orlando's first win at the City Ground as well.
Yeah,
excellent. All the games we've been to, we've drawn loads, and we saw losses against West Ham this season, Newcastle last season, and so it was long overdue. So a very happy boy, and Callum scored 2 goals, so he was thrilled.
There you go. Absolutely.
It's worth at this point calling out the atmosphere, right? Unless this is something we talk about later. But
go ahead.
We watched and we talk about this a little bit in our North American WhatsApp group, and we talked about it a bit in the Talking Reds WhatsApp groups. The atmosphere this season's been a bit flat. And I think a lot of that came through circumstance from what happened with Nuno and then the Ange, the terrible months under Ange. And it felt like the team and the players, there was a bit of a disconnect with the fans at times. I felt yesterday they were on it early on, and we didn't have to give away, 2,000, 3,000 black and white scarves to try and generate an atmosphere. We were just there. We were backing the team. And to Greg's point, we came out first minute. You could see the intent. You could see that they were up for the game. That translates to the crowd then. And that's, for me, the best atmosphere we've seen since last season by quite a distance as well. I think it's worth calling that, because if that's the start of Fortress City Ground again, and the fans and the players, being that one and that symbiosis of, it's a difficult place to go. You don't want to go to the City Ground because Forest players will give you a tough game and the crowd are going to back them for 90 minutes. You don't want to go there because you're not going to get much out of us. If that kick-starts that for the second half of the season, then we're on a good track.
Yeah, because it feels like that's a really good, important point. It feels like we've been chasing that fortress concept, right, since the first season. And it doesn't, certainly the end of last season was really poor. I think we lost like 5 consecutive matches at home or something like that. So, yeah, it's a great point, Andrew. I really appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that forward. We're hit the halfway point, so we're just going to take a quick break and hear from our wonderful sponsor, the Cheese Trader.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Yes, the perfect cheesy mix. Stu Freestone, the wonderful Forest fan that he is. If you haven't had a chance yet, please go to York. Please visit him on Grape Lane because that place is phenomenal. And he doesn't just have cheese, guys. He has posh cheese toasties. He has loaded fries as well. So, man, he's a man of many talents, right, Greg? So, and just to let you guys know, he's a poet as well. Literally is a poet, and he's got a book coming out. So in March, end of March. So we'll get the link out there for you to purchase tickets. Hopefully there's still tickets available, but he's going to be launching his first book in March, which is amazing. So what a guy. I've also actually seen a video of him too singing a Deftones song, Andrew. I know Andrew's our resident guitarist, so if you guys are fans of the Deftones, it was pretty remarkable to see Stu do the screaming part of that song as well, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so again, guys just got so many layers. And of course you get 10% off as well if you quote Talking Reds, so make sure you do that and check him out. All right, we're one more focus on one more guy before we kind of switch gears on what's going on with Forest in general and kind of just the trajectory of the club moving forward under Dyche and Woan and Stone. So Scotty, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on Igor Jesus? Greg kind of touched on this before we came on. just what you're seeing from him. And are we working towards potentially anointing him as the striker of the future? Because I don't know, the guy's been pretty brilliant. What are your thoughts on him and his game right now?
Yeah, I mean, what a game for him last night. He was up against I think it was Romero and Van de Ven. I think the two Spurs central defenders, and they're quite a, let's just say they're a robust pairing. They're pretty physical, and he held his own. And whilst he's not a massive centre forward, but he held his own. He did well. I almost felt at some points when you see him, he's starting to almost like take on some of the characteristics a little bit of Taiwo. He sort of feels like he can hold the ball up really well. He does have that kind of strength. He's obviously not got the same kind of physical profile as Taiwo, but I think he's doing really well. I think if Woody did come back, and say Woody was able to come back this weekend, I think Igor should stay in the team. He is at the moment. He is our number one striker. He's playing really well. He hasn't got the goal in the Premier League yet. He's got goals in Europe. I think he's got one. He's got one. Has he?
Got the one against Wolves.
Okay, but he was pretty unlucky. He was very unlucky when we played against Liverpool to get that goal disallowed. So I think for him, for his confidence, if he can slot a few more goals in the Premier League, I can only see that being a benefit to him. Builds his confidence even more. He's scoring goals in Europe. He's doing very well in Europe. It was funny as well in the game last night against Spurs. If you saw, he almost created an opportunity for Morgan as well. He kind of drifted slightly towards the right, kind of held the ball up, and then he squared the ball across the face. And Morgan tried to slide in to try and sort of get a touch to put the ball in. But he's creating. Not only is he scoring goals, he's also creating opportunities for other players in the team. He's holding the ball up really well. So he's looking like he's becoming a complete player for us, and that's what we want, right? When he was playing for Botafogo, when we saw him in the competition there, he was scoring goals. He scored some goals against some really good teams there. He has, I think, his ceiling. He's nowhere near his ceiling yet. I think there's a lot of opportunity for him to improve as well. So look, I think we're very lucky to have him, to have Chris Wood hopefully coming back soon. Let's not talk about Cali now, but I'm very pleased with Jesus. Do you guys call him Jesus or Jesus? This is something which I wanted to talk about because some people call Jesus.
Yeah, because he's Portuguese, so you pronounce the J. In Spain, it's a H. So he's not Jesus like Jesus Navas, who played for Man City because he's Spanish. It's Jesus, so it's Jesus because it's Portuguese. Which is why Jose Mourinho is Jose Mourinho, not Jose Mourinho, because you pronounce it J.
Spanish versus Portuguese. We've got it.
Exactly.
Cheers, Greg.
Look what you learn on Talking Reds that you never knew, right? That's fantastic.
It's not Jesus, it's Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I thank you, Scott. Yeah, absolutely. Can't disagree with any of that. I think as a 24-year-old player, I mean, it's easy to forget. We probably look at him as something more senior than that, but in reality, he's been around a little bit, right? I think he played out in Middle East as well at one point when he was very young. So he's really had quite an interesting career to date. He's still only 24 years old, so there's a lot to. But I just like the acclimation to the Premier League. I think I put this out on X. I think if you look at it, yes, the goals haven't come as much, and he's had a couple disallowed, but when those goals start coming, I mean, I think it's fair to say he's made a transition to the Premier League almost on par with Murillo. So in terms of being able to
the physicality of it, I mean, that's what
exactly.
I really appreciate. He's a willing runner. He'll run for 90 minutes, but the physical side of it, you can see him. He's smart. When there's a long ball coming in from the keeper, he'll back into the defender and he'll use his physique and his body, to good effect. At this point, can I just call out how bad the ref was yesterday as well? Because we're not really.
I was going to try to avoid that, not to sully the joy, but I think you're right to do it. Yeah, it's a good time to do it.
But they never let it phase him. I think Jesus in particular, because he was the one that seemed to be copying a lot of these fouls, those long balls up where he wasn't getting anything in those 50-50 decisions. But he didn't let it bother him. He didn't, drop his head. He was still, the willing runner until he went off, 80 minutes in. So, yeah, I think he's a Premier League striker, born and bred.
Yeah, one of the worst refereeing performances I've ever seen. I think it was just weird. I think Greg, sorry, you did coin inconsistent, which I definitely think there was aspects of that, but
It was
we
inconsistent
won't.
because he was giving them fouls for stuff and not giving us similar. And when Igor Jesus got kind of hooked back by Romero, I think it was, and nothing was given, it was incredible. But on Igor Jesus, I want to chip in and say that I've been so impressed with him. You know, his hold-up play, his link-up play, his intelligence in the Premier League has evolved as well. He's now becoming, as you've used the word, acclimatized to what it means to be a Premier League striker. And it just goes to show that you can't expect someone instantly to kind of hit the ground running all of the time. Sure, some of them do. I mean, look at Ekitike. You know, he really hit the ground running at Liverpool, but he's playing in Europe and coming to the Premier League, so the transition maybe isn't so great. But Igor Jesus coming from Botafogo in Brazil, you know, there is that kind of, you know, different continent side of things. There's that off the pitch kind of things as well, and just settling. And he's got a run in the team through the fact that Wood's been injured. He's managed to score some goals in the Europa. He's had some misfortune with ruled out goals in the Prem, got his goal against Wolves. It feels to me like he literally is just bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. And yesterday was his most complete performance in the Forest shirt, full stop, because he was just involved so much. As a striker, when you have your number one striker, your number 9, leading the line in the way that he did, you can't go wrong because he's bringing others into play. He's peeling off, as Andrew touched on. He's backing in the right way as well. He's very, very strong boy. We know he's good in the air, and he can score goals. Okay, we saw that in midweek against Utrecht. Off the bench, 82 seconds later, he's scoring a goal. So we're very, very fortunate that he has started to really come to the fore now, because who knows what's happening with Wood. And Callum Hudson-Odoi is starting to kind of, you know, he's getting himself going. So, you know, very much lots to be positive about. But Igor Jesus very much now showing that, in answer to your question, I think at the start, he very much looks like he could be the striker for the future for Forest.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, to your point. If the goals start coming, I don't think there's any question, right? And £16.5 million, what a bargain through that process. Again, we'll caveat that because it's a Textor deal, but, you know, just speaking, you know, I almost forgot about this player. Andrew, you had a great video that came out, I think, prior to or early on in the season around Angus Gunn. So we know that he's still alive, and we know that he's actually still on the squad. So that's good. We saw him running around the sideline.
I was about to text you, Andrew.
I know.
I was like,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
was not lost on me yesterday.
Yeah, but let's talk about the other end of the spine from Igor. How did you feel about that Victor performance? Because I'm just curious of the comparison between how kind of he's played in Europa versus what you saw yesterday. Because I think we were hoping Sells would play. There was a lot of worry and concern if he wasn't. How has any of that been alleviated for you in terms of the worry? So if going forward, especially in the next match coming up against Fulham, Sells can't go, how are you feeling about John Victor in goal?
So one thing we talked about just before we went live on air, I think as long as you have Murillo and Milenkovic in front of him, I think, you know, that gives you a bit of a wall and a bit of protection against John. I think Sells is still the number one keeper. Let's not make any, you know, concessions about, you know, Victor having a clean sheet against Spurs is like, you know, it wasn't a great performance by Spurs. I think I looked at the stats and they had one shot on target. Now, I recall this was at 1-0 and it was a pretty good shot. It was low, down to the keeper's right, going in the first half. He made a good save. He fumbled it a little bit, but he was able to claw it back in. I don't recall him having to really do much else. And that's not to take anything away from the performance because, you know, he's still coming out, he's claiming a lot of crosses and his distribution was okay, I think, at times. I think he was trying to release the ball early, you know, those long balls into space so that Hutchinson and Hudson-Odoi can kind of run into the space behind. I think as long as Milenkovic and Murillo play in front of him, I'm fine with John. I still think there's some concerns there that he's perhaps not got as sticky gloves as I'd like him to have, that he is prone to perhaps spilling a ball or making a save and not pushing it out of the danger area. That still seemed like it's well within his wheelhouse, but I mean, it's a clean sheet. You've got to give him the credit for a clean sheet. He did make that one really, really good save, and Spurs didn't really provide much threat beyond that. So I think when Sells comes back, I think it's a no-brainer. Sells goes back between the sticks. But there was a moment in the second half, and my mind did drift back to that Angus Gunn introductory speech that I did. John Victor went down injured. And I was thinking, is this going to be, the grand arrival of Angus Gunn on the City ground, and maybe he becomes this Forest legend that then Victor's out and Sells never comes back, and Angus Gunn leads us back to Europe, over the next 3 or 4 months. Sadly, it didn't materialise, but I think, Angus Gunn's not a bad keeper either. I think you look at the depth we have in that department. I think we're fine. And again, I think when you've got those defenders in front of him, if we have a consistent run with, again, not just those two, but, with Ola Aina coming back, with Nico Williams on the left. Nico Williams still my low-key shout for player of the season, by the way. I know Elliot Anderson is going to get it, but Nico Williams, week in, week out, is phenomenal. Apologies, Greg, for using that word. But he's just every week, he's a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 every week from Nico Williams. So with that back four, you could probably put me between the sticks and we'd stand half a chance at getting something out of a game. So, again, not to take anything away from John Victor, I think it was a very solid, complete performance with that one really, really good save. But I think it's that back four that makes us solid defensively, not necessarily the keeper.
Yeah, no, all great points. I agree with you. And Nico, I think it said on X he's had 51 tackles this season, which is the most by any fullback in the Premier League, which is pretty amazing. So, Greg, if you don't mind, I think we're going to kind of transition, pulling up that next slide with looking at some things around kind of just the form of the team. And so on the left, guys, for those who can't see it, we've got wins against Leeds, win against Liverpool, win against. This is again since Sean Dyche has come in. Against Malmo, win against Wolves, win against Utrecht, and then, of course, the win yesterday against Tottenham. So we're talking about 6 wins out of 8 games. So, and then you look at where we're at in the table right now. We've moved up to 16th. We are above Leeds, of course. We're a couple of spots above that relegation zone. And we're on, to your point, too, about goal difference as well, Andrew. That was huge, right, yesterday, getting a 3-0 win. Always great to get a clean sheet, but to get 3 goals on top of it to help pad some of that goal difference is huge when we're kind of in that relative area. And then if you look on the far right there, we're looking at the actual, this is European Reds posted this on X. This is what the form table looks like. And Forest is actually in 5th with 13 points. And a goal difference of actually a +2. So this is absolutely amazing things to see. So I kind of want to touch on, you can take that down if you want, Greg. I kind of want to touch on, thank you. Scotty, from your perspective, how happy have you been with just the way things have gone with Dyche, Wone, and Stone, that triumvirate, if you will? Because was it this kind of level that you expected? Were you just hoping it was going to be, just kind of keep things somewhat stable, whatever? I mean, what are just your take on and your thoughts on how that's progressed so far and how they've sort of set the team up and the way that they're operating as a collective coaching unit?
Yeah, I mean, I think when Dyche was appointed, I think everyone was thinking he's going to come in, he's going to make us solid, he's going to make us hard to beat, and he's certainly done that. I think maybe there was more of we were sort of more hoping that with the squad of players that we've got, with the attacking players which we have, that he can then actually turn us into a real attacking force, which we're starting to see more and more of. We talked around the twin threat of playing with 2 wingers. It is great to see Stoney and Woney, because they were they just having them as the coaches, them sort of working with the players and sort of knowing them from sort of the days back in the 90s. It is great having them on board as well. But I think really I've sort of feel he's probably exceeded expectations a little bit. I think really he's in terms of that form table, for us to be so high up that table, to be doing so well, to be scoring, scoring 3 against Liverpool, we now score 3 against Spurs. I think it is really, really positive for us. For me, the thing that I kind of want to see more of is almost like a consistency thing. I think we can have brilliant games. As I mentioned, 3-0 against Liverpool, 3-0 now against Spurs, and we've had some good results in the Europa as well. But we've had some games where we haven't started the game well. When we played against Everton, being one example of that, we don't start particularly well. We just don't seem to get going. We don't seem to be really sort of, trying to get into the game, and it's the consistency of performance, which I think is now the next sort of thing which Dyche and his coaching team need to focus on, because I just feel we need to be scoring more goals. We've found some good wingers, we've found a style of play which we can play, but it's the consistency of performance now. We've got to start well. Starting well for me is key. We talked around it a minute ago. It was great to see us start well against Spurs, and then look what happened. We go and win the game. So consistency of performance for me is key moving forward.
Brilliant. Actually, I forgot, Greg, if you don't mind bringing that up again. Sorry. Yeah, there's a second slide on there. So we did a prediction episode, and so this is just kind of looking at, I didn't put what we predicted on there at this moment because I think we'll talk about that later. But to your point, Scott, so we've got 6 points in December, right? Trying to find a way to get a string of games, right? I think we won 2 in a row in the Premier League at one point, but we've been able to kind of avoid losing 2 in a row, which is critical. But if you look at on the right, so on the right here, for those who can't watch it or are listening, we've got from Nuno, granted, we're very small sample size for this season, but it was 1.3 points is what he was averaging. Then under Ange, this shouldn't shock anybody, 0.25 points per game, which was obviously atrocious and is really ultimately the reason why we are where we are. But Dyche right now is averaging about 1.6 points per game, which is pretty awesome. And that would technically translate as of today to 48 points for the season. If we were to continue on that trajectory, obviously that 1.6 was probably not going to happen, but hey, crazy things have happened. Look at Palace last season. They really ascended up the table, right? What I wanted to bring up, Andrew, I wanted to get your thoughts on, to Scott's point, is that those games that are coming up. So we've got Fulham away next season, or next match. So from your perspective, I mean, based off it's one performance in isolation, how confident are you that we can continue to avoid this sort of relegation, and how confident are you going into Fulham, being that it is away and we have struggled with them away historically?
I think we've seen enough, and yes, the stats are probably, exaggerating how well we've actually been playing to some extent, but I think we've seen enough to think that we are back to the old Nottingham Forest under Sean Dyche, and the old Nottingham Forest are difficult to beat. And if we have a goal in a game, then we've got a chance at winning a game. I think that's the best we could have hoped for after that first 6-8 weeks of the season. I think what excites me about Dyche, and I'll come to the Fulham game in a second, just to extend on what Scott was saying. I think when Dyche came in, the big hope was that he was going to fix us defensively. It's taken a few games, but we've kind of seen that now. We are a lot more solid. I think having the full squad fit and having Milan Milenkovic to circle back to that again, I think that makes us look better. But we do look
out of 12, I think 6 clean sheets out of 12.
Exactly. So we look better defensively. We are now difficult to beat, whereas under Ange we were literally, sliding doors of, a goal a game, a goal a minute at times. We were just going in the wrong direction. So he's arrested that, which is good. I think this is the best squad that Sean Dyche has had to manage. And we're seeing that. So there was this big concern that he was going to come in and Dyche ball was this ultra defensive, 0-0 every game that you wouldn't see it. I think, he understands Forest. I know we've said that to a death, but he understands Forest. He understands what a Nottingham Forest team should be, playing like. He's not had the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi or Igor Jesus, or I know he's had Chris Wood in the past, but the level of ability that he's got in this squad to build not just a strong defensive unit, but a good counter-attacking unit that plays on the ground, that plays in that Forest way, that's dynamic, that can create things out of nothing and just go on a tear. I think he understands that. I think he's got the capability to do that. So that 6 out of 8 wins, yes, it sounds excessive, and it maybe does, exaggerate a little bit, but it's not that far out where we should be with this squad. You think at the start of the season, I foolishly in the Talking Reds Prediction League said that we'd finish 5th, and I'm probably not going to,
You weren't alone there. I said 8th.
There we go. But I think you're seeing, a top half of the table squad the way we're playing at the moment. Now, if we hadn't had that 2-month handicap, we'd be talking, well, can we scrape Europe again? Can we get top 6, top 8? That's not unrealistic. So to circle back to the Fulham game, which I know was the original question, I think I want Forest to be back at a point where other teams are worrying about us, not us worrying about what are Fulham going to do to us. I want to worry about what are we going to do to Fulham. And I think we're starting to see that. You went into Sunday thinking, with that team, when we saw that lineup come out, 75 minutes before kickoff, you're thinking that I think we can give them a game here. I think, we can go on the front foot. I think we can be the team that's dictating play, that can go out and create the chances. A lot's going to ride on what team he puts out against Fulham, but there's no reason whatsoever, even with the form that they're in, that if we don't play the same way we did against Fulham that we played against Spurs, I think we can beat them. I think we can absolutely, at the very least, give them a good game. So I want that to be every game, not just Fulham or Liverpool away or Spurs at home. Every single game, you pick the right 11 players for that game and you dictate the play, not let the opposition dictate it to you. And I think if we do that 9 times out of 10, we're going to be in the game and we're going to get something out of it. And I think that sets us up then for the rest of the season perfectly.
Yeah, fantastic. Greg, what about you? I mean, in terms of, you've long said, okay, if we finish 17th and we win Europa, so you still kind of keeping that firmly in your target, in your sights, right? Do you still think that's on the table? Is there anything that gives you pause that might be plausible, or even maybe to make a nice run to kind of move up the table? Because we've got, just to read off the fixtures that we have coming up for the rest of December, we've got, let's see, we had Wolves, we have Everton, we had Spurs, then we have Fulham, Man City, and then we have Everton at home.
So obviously when you have a game like yesterday, you're feeling very optimistic, but I want to kind of take us back to our last four, including yesterday. So we lost at home to Brighton. We had an XG ourselves of 0.96 in that game versus Brighton XG against us of 2.06. We lost the game 2-0. At Wolves, we had an XG of 1.12 versus Wolves XG of 1. I mean, they had that real clear headed, didn't they? They probably should have put away. We come away with a 1-0 win. We know it wasn't pretty. Of course, we go to Everton, and we know, and Scott was right, we started really badly. You know, we had an XG of 0.31 versus Everton's XG of 1.25. So their XG wasn't especially high. We allowed them some soft goals. So you can see that, you know, those kind of figures are within the same area of each other. Take yesterday, for example, Forest XG of 2.32 versus a Spurs XG of 0.33. You know, that's not by accident. That's the kind of hard work that Sean Dyche has been trying to get his team.
It's amazing the difference Dan and Doy makes when he doesn't play.
Oh,
well, it could be that as well. But I mean, it's like we've had a couple of games where we really didn't create enough, like Everton away. But we're now producing performances, or we produced yesterday, where if we can create an XG of 2+ and concede almost nothing, then, you know, we're going to be moving up the table and, you know, moving away from 16th into a boring mid-table finish. I don't think we're going to finish above 12th or 13th. That's not going to happen, you know, because of that 2-month hangover that we, you know, that deficit we had with Ange Postecoglou. But certainly I want the team to go in the right direction. I want them to move up. The Spurs game had Dyche's fingerprints all over it. Low concession of high quality chances. We had 0 big chances allowed. We need to see more of that. We were winning the dual zone, second balls, midfield pressure. You know, Sangare and Anderson were central to that, as we've talked about, in the engine room. We need a lot more of that. We're going to be without Sangare, so that's a concern. But because it felt like, you know, Anderson's been doing that all season, but Sangare really stepped up. But winning the dual zone means that we are going to be better in matches. The wide threat as well, actually turning into box entries. So we're talking about out-and-out wing play, where those crosses are coming in, and we saw it within the first 4 minutes. Hutchinson laid it to Savona, who I thought was solid. A great cross, and Sangare on another day, that ball finds the back of the net. So it's balls coming into the box. So wide threat with those out-and-out wingers that we talked about. The work rate, as we touched on from Hutchinson, was fantastic. Hudson-Odoi's work rate was fantastic as well. They're now in prime position. So if they are now going to give us that output and that engine room in the midfield with Douglas Luiz coming in, if we can replicate that going forwards, then we are going to see Forest pulling out results. We go to Fulham, who are going to be suffering with losing 3 key players to AFCON. We're losing Sangare, they're losing Calvin Bassey, they're losing Alex Iwobi, and I think it's Chukwuemeka. If I pronounced that right or wrong, I apologise. But they've been integral players for Fulham, and they've been very up and down as well. We haven't had much joy at Fulham in recent seasons, but we play a week today. We're recording this on the Monday. It's our longest break. There's no midweek game. So what I really hope now is that we can take on these teams, and we can definitely pick up points away at Fulham. You know, Fulham away will be a proper barometer. I don't think it's a free hit. It's going to be very narrow. I mean, literally, I'm going to give you the obvious things here. It could either be a narrow win for them or a narrow win for us, or a draw. I mean, it's very, very obvious. I don't see it being another 5-0, he says out loud. So I'll put it out into the ether now. Man City at home. Is it a bonus game? They're in great form. Foden has come back into playing some of his best football. I think as long as we can keep the XG against down and stay in it until late on, you never know. We could replicate last season's performance and get a 1-0 win. And of course, Everton come, and it's a revenge 6-pointer, you might say. I mean, they're in a decent position in the table. We got punched in the nose at Goodison, at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Sorry, guys. And
it's an understandable slip.
Really we didn't really get going. We need a response, and to get a great home win yesterday was really, really good. We need to back it up now with the next 3 games: Fulham away, City at home, Everton at home, by performing in those areas on the pitch that matter, that midfield engine room and those attacking wide threat. If everyone's playing to their game, even if they don't quite match yesterday, but they're kind of there or thereabouts, then I'll be very happy, because I thought yesterday was an exceptional performance.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, guys, I think we've
points it was offered to you now.
In those next 3?
Yeah, 5 points.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You take 5.
I would.
You take 5 points. Yeah, 5 from 9. I think I'd bite your balls off for 5 from 9. I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, I want to say one quick, just to answer a quick question for Graham Smith, and thanks, Graham, for being on today and being in the comments. Yeah, is Aina off to AFCON? No, he is not. No, he is not. Thank goodness for that, right? And what a video that was that he put out too, just after the match had concluded. It was great. Always great to see stuff from him, and really looking forward to him. Obviously, he played on the B team the other night, so hopefully he won't be too long before he comes back. When Backwood did that, he was back within a couple matches. So appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. I think we ran through everything that we possibly could run through. I just want to also, another plug for a little bit of like and subscribe as well. We always appreciate when you guys do that. It's great to have an opportunity, as we said earlier, to just be able to reach out and connect with Forest fans, especially like as Andrew will attest, for those of us who live on the other side of the pond, who don't get to come back to matches as frequently, don't get to interact with everyone at the NAB as frequently as we want to, but we do have the opportunity through these kinds of forums to do so, and appreciate all of you guys for joining us in the chat, and for all of you on here. We'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Scotty. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Feel good factor. How good is it getting a win like that? 3-0. Really, just really pleased. As I say, all about consistency from here on in. We want to keep that level up there. Keep playing well. Just as an aside, so that the next game, as you said, is Fulham. So it's a Monday night 8:00 kickoff for all Australia. Or anyone that's watching in Australia, that's a 6 a.m. kickoff if you're in Queensland, or a 7 a.m. kickoff if you're in Sydney and Melbourne down there. But I just thought I'd throw that in. But thanks for having me on, guys. It's been it's been great to see you guys again.
Absolutely, Mr. Andrew Cove, the Grand Madness. What about you? Final thoughts from you?
I think you're only as good as your last game, but I think that game yesterday felt the closest to last season that we've had all season. I think you had the backing of the crowd. You had a resolute defensive performance. You saw some very concise, efficient, dynamic attacking play. You saw 11 great performances from the 11 starters. I think if we can continue that trend, I think this season, yes, we're going to write off kind of what our initial expectations was, but I think we'll be fine, and that can give us a platform to focus on Europe and build on what are we going to do next season. So, up Dice Ball.
Brilliant. Greg, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, the word that Scotty used earlier, consistency. I've always beaten that drum. If you want to get anywhere in any league, you need to be consistent. And it's an obvious thing to say, perhaps. But, when you're winning one week and losing the next, winning one week, losing the next, that's inconsistency. Those last 4 games, including yesterday, were win, lose, or whichever way around it was. So, going to Fulham, who I mentioned we've obviously struggled against when we've gone there, a point would be a fantastic point at Fulham. But at the same time, if we really want to get ourselves up that table, it's the teams that are just above us that we need to pick up points against, significant points against. It's no good going away to Liverpool and beating Spurs at home. If we can't beat the Brentford, the Fulham, and Bournemouth now, who've dropped down there as well. I know that we've obviously lost there already this season, but those teams that are in and around us, we need to pick up points against them to really be sure that we can pull away from that drop zone. We've got a little bit of a cushion, but let's not be complacent. What we've shown in midweek when we got pulled back in Europe to 1-1, and then we brought on a super sub to score late, is that we can definitely stay in a game and we can still win it from a losing position. And there's one more final thing. Yesterday was the first time that we've won in the Premier League off the back of a midweek European game. The record was shocking up until then, and we were certainly suffering from Thursday, Sunday football. We're having more players back in the squad. We were able to include Douglas Luiz and Zinchenko in the week, etc. So it just goes to show that when you start getting players back, it means players can get a breather and the pressure's off them a little bit. So hopefully, with no more European games now until the new year, we've got 2 more to play. It's all about the Premier League. And so we can maybe see a bit of clever rotation. And one thing I would say as well, in that centre midfield area, don't be too surprised if you see Zinchenko coming on late on. Maybe last 10 minutes, last 15. Douglas Luiz hopefully is fit to start against Fulham. And we'll do a preview on that later on in the week. But we are now looking for a centre midfield option with Dominguez possibly out. So Zinchenko plays there for Ukraine. I'm not saying start him there, but it might be that we use him to close games out perhaps. But yeah, looking good, feeling great after a win. Come on, you Reds.
Brilliant. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. And I know not to end on a sad note by any stretch, but hearts and thoughts and prayers with the people of Bondi Beach for the unfortunate thing that just happened. And so we're really thinking about them and their ability to kind of, move forward, because that was obviously an awful thing. But guys, what a week it's been. Thank you so much for tuning in to Talking Reds and Nottingham Forest podcast. We're really grateful for you guys participating and being able to engage us, which has been awesome. So, and as always, come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red. Yeah, we're talking.